Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 63 of the Knuckle Sammich podcast. And as always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
Good morning. I'm putting myself on a one-card suspension.
One-card suspension?
Yeah. That's how bad we did last week.
Well, usually whenever you have a week where you go like 2-4, we have to fire back off. That way we can make all the money back that we lost the previous week.
That's what you always tell me, but I think this one is worthy of suspension.
It was a rough week. It was a rough week. Dippers, what we were talking about is the picks from last week. Mr. Shackelford probably had one of the worst nights he's ever had at UFC 239. 2-4, so we're going to have to get back on the hot hand. He was 7-1 coming into this card. I guess water always finds its level.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, we were like maybe one mistaken knockdown from going 1-5.
I mean 1-5. So Dippers, we will talk about the UFC 239 card, talk about the biggest winners, losers, hit on some little nuggets around the MMA world, and we will break down the card this weekend that is headlined by Jermaine Durandamy and Aspen Ladd. But before we get to any of that, Latency, producer, you know what to do.
Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford.
A sauce on the side production. All right, Mr. Shackelford. So what went wrong?
Everything.
I agree.
I put myself on suspension, but I really did. This whole week, I went through like all the experts. I was going through all the Twitter accounts, just going over the podcasts I listened to. There was almost nobody that had even 500 picks on this card.
Former guest, Curtis Blades, actually released a thing. It was like it was an ad for MyBookie, and he gave his picks. He had the main card picked completely right.
That's insane.
That's the only guy I saw that had everybody picked right.
If he would have made some insane money there.
Oh yeah.
Had he bet that. It was tough. We can start at the top. The Jones and Santos fight. What I meant by we were one mistaken knockdown from going 1-6. You watched the whole fight live. I watched it later. I gave 1 and 2 to Santos, and unfortunately I couldn't 5-5 online. That one got shut down pretty quick. But pretty much unanimously, everybody said Santos won round 5. So that's 3-2 rounds with no 10-8s in there. Just a nuts fight. All of a sudden, Jones didn't really look good against Anthony Smith. He looked bad against Gustafsson the first round, and then got a takedown and beat up Gustafsson really bad. And then he looks very, 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 very beatable in this fight. I mean, that's the best way to put it.
Yes, I agree. And you know what's crazy is that actually looking at the judges' scorecards, so obviously Thiago Santos, all the judges scored, or the scoring for this was really, really weird on what the judges had scored. Some of the judges, actually, the 2 of the judges gave Santos round 4, and one of the judges gave Santos round 5, and some of the judges, 2 of the judges, even gave John Jones round 2.
See, that's crazy because again, I watched rounds 1 through 4, and I just when you have a night of bad picks like that, and a lot of times I do this anyways, I'll roll through and just see what some of the pros are picking, because there's no two bones about it. A lot of those guys know things about people's camps. We won't be privy to, just they're there. They know the coaches. They know, hey, this guy's got this going on. So I try and keep an eye on that. And if a lot of pros are picking one guy that's a dog, or, a lot of people are putting money in on the favorite, Darren Till comes to mind with that, because a lot of people didn't know Darren Till going into that Cowboy fight. And then guys like Rogan and those guys that were friends with this one really obscure Muay Thai guy knew Darren Till and was like, hey, that's an insane betting line, bet that. So which we didn't listen to that, and we always pick Cowboy anyways, so we couldn't go for that anyways. But everybody said Jones 1, 3, and 4, like pretty much hands down. That just goes to show you, man, the judges scoring things so crazy. And Dana White told Brett Okamoto that he was crazy, or he was saying like, if you scored that fight for Santos, you're crazy. Jones dictated the fight, pushed the pace. He didn't really. He just walked forward.
That's all he did.
I mean, he walked forward. Santos would land good leg kicks and then throw bombs on him, and Jones would get scared and basically run away, and then it just went like that over and over and over. I had it Santos. I had it Santos, and a lot of people had it Santos. So and it came out that he had surgery on his right knee, I guess about 2 months before the fight. I think to clean some stuff up and do an MCL repair or take it out or something. And then it was confirmed by MRI the next day that he tore every ligament in his left knee. So the dude beat, in a lot of people's eyes, the dude beat the GOAT of all time on one leg.
Yeah, I don't know how you can say. I understand that John Jones did move forward the whole time, so you could make the argument that he dictated the fight. But usually the person who throws more strikes is the person who is leading the dance. And Thiago Santos almost threw 50%. I think he actually threw right at 50% more strikes than what John Jones did. The final count ended up being 167 to 105 in favor of Santos. And we've never seen that before in a John Jones fight. Usually, especially a fight like this where it was fought primarily at distance, John Jones wins those fights hands down. And I think Dana White kind of makes himself look like a clown coming out saying there will be no immediate rematch. Santos didn't deserve it, even though the guy fought on one leg. And on some people's scorecards, even one of the three people that they paid to score the fight, Santos won the fight.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first fight that a card legitimately was given to somebody other than John Jones.
Yes.
I mean, DC won a round or two, maybe 2 rounds against him in their 2 fights, but that's the closest we've ever seen anybody. I mean, besides Gustafsson, I mean, I feel like I'm always leaving him out, but...
You know what's crazy? If everybody would have scored round 2 for Santos, he would have won a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And he did more damage in round 2.
Yeah,
that was obvious.
To me, I really thought round 2 was clearly his.
Yes.
I think there was a kick at some point, and when they showed the replay, I don't think the kick even reached his head. I think it was more like in the chest area, and he kind of tripped up.
He fell against the cage.
Yeah, it was more of a slip. Maybe the judges thought that was, but if you're saying that they gave
one of the
Santos 4, then we don't really know what they were looking at. But to me, if they were gonna give it to Jones on a split, that's the only way they saw it, because he didn't do anything else in round 2. I mean, I don't. And that was the round that Santos clearly hurt his leg in, too. I mean, surely they didn't think that Jones hurt his leg. He didn't even touch his legs. He was the one hurting Jones's legs.
Yeah, both guys got carried out of there because both of them had bummed legs. But one was a direct result of what Santos was. Both of them were on Santos because he threw the kick, missed, and he hurt his own leg, and then he hurt John Jones's leg. So it's kind of weird to think about what he would have done in this fight had his leg never been hurt.
Those low calf kicks are really, there's something new that's really hit the game in probably the last year and a half. But just when you think about just like physics or just the way that your body has to throw them, if you think of like a top, if a top is or not a top, I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. So if you had your arms out straight out and you were just spinning, you'd go somewhat slower than you had them at kind of like a triangle above your head. You'd go faster. So in the kicking game, any kick above the waist is going to be slower than a kick lower. So if you throw a high kick It's going to be a little bit slower, so you can kind of get a little spin. The torque's not as bad as on that planting leg. But when you're kicking that low, that's as fast as you can kick. That's as hard and as fast as you can kick because you have gravity helping you out. And if you miss that kick, it's a lot of torque on that outside, on that planting leg if you don't spin through, which he didn't. He kind of held in place. So think of it you're just basically spinning as hard as you can with one leg planted. You do that enough times, you're bound to pop your knee.
No, I agree. I thought this was weird. I think this deserves an immediate rematch as soon as Santos is healthy, but the ball's in Dana's court, unfortunately.
I mean, if I was John Jones and for some reason he thought he won like every second of the fight.
Yeah, he even said, why'd you not take him down? Oh, because I was dictating the fight.
Yeah, well, if I watched that, now again, I was just a crummy high school wrestler. But I can tell you, I can remember the name, especially my senior year. I remember all 11 kids that beat me. I remember every one of their names. It was only like 8 kids, but a couple of them beat me more than once. I remember them, and I would have wrestled them 1,000 times. I don't know how the best fighter on earth can go to bed at night when I was just some schlub that couldn't sleep at night when he was 17 because he had to beat the other schlub from 2 hours away. I don't know. I don't know how he'll go to bed tonight every night and look at that film and be like, yeah, I won that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I just don't understand it. If I was him, I'd be like, you know what? I'm hurt. He's hurt. Book it again. Yep. I mean, that gives everybody else time in the division to build up a little bit. Rockhold got his brains beat in, so that's gone. You don't really have any big guy that's not young coming up, except for Corey Anderson maybe, but I don't know. I bet you if you showed a picture of Corey Anderson to 10 people, I bet you 2 of them know their name, and that's me and you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. It's going to be interesting to see what comes down with this. What do you think's next for John Jones? Do you think he jumps up in weight, or do you think that...
after that, no, I don't think he does.
I don't think so either.
I think he's gotten old quick on us. I think he's got old quick, and I've said for a long time that I don't think his striking's actually that great. I just think he owns a foot advantage over everybody in that weight class. So, and you saw it when he kind of came in and Santos started winging those bombs. Jones lifted his head straight up in the air, closed his eyes, and just stiff-armed him basically. And it worked because he's got a foot reach, but... he ain't going to do that to Stipe or Francis. I can guarantee that.
No.
And who else? They're not going to bump him up in the heavyweight division to fight anybody but the champ or the number one contender. So
right.
I think a guy like Alistair would be a very tough fight for him because he can take those oblique and long kicks all day. It won't affect him in the slightest. I don't know what's next for him. I was going to say Rockhold, but, I mean... That's out of the question. Maybe you give him Jan, because Jan just lost to Santos, but then Jan just broke Rockhold's jaw, and he was on like a 5-fight win streak before then. So either Jan or Corey Anderson, I got to say. I don't think it'll be Anthony Smith again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows?
I think we're in a weird spot.
Yeah, this card just kind of blew everything up. You had Jones being... the last show, I said that I really think Jones is holding the division and the heavyweight division on its own just because he's so good. But then this card comes out and he does not look good at all. Again, for like the 3rd fight in a row.
I agree 100% with that. So next up we have Amanda Nunes. She knocks Holly Holm out in the 1st round. We had actually picked Holm. Thought that she could drag this out to 5 rounds. Does not do that. What's next for Amanda Nunes?
I guess the Cyborg rematch. Cyborg is fighting again here in a couple weeks. But, I mean, we all expect her to win that.
Yes.
I could be wrong. The girl that she's fighting is the girl that just beat Megan Anderson. Tough girl, but very good jiu-jitsu player, but it's hard to think that she's going to take down Cyborg. I'm going to guess the Cyborg rematch and then maybe retirement. I mean, she talked about that even before the first Cyborg fight. Yeah, so
little Barry Sanders, baby, go out on top.
I mean, I made an analogy earlier, about The Office, and I won't watch an episode after the Michael Leaves episode because I know that's absolutely as good as it's going to get. And if I watch any more, it'll ruin the show. So I think that's her chance to do it. And I would pick her against Cyborg. She just keeps coming up with new parts of her game. You know, her cardio's gotten better. She used that low calf kick in a lot of her last fights. This time it didn't work. She threw it. Holly Holm countered. Holly was looking good early. And then all of a sudden, Noon starts throwing that. She threw a high kick. She threw 2 of them. And she's an orthodox fighting a southpaw. So it's Holly was circling to her left, which generally wouldn't be great against such a power puncher. But because she's southpaw, that right hand's so easy to see coming that long distance, it's not a terrible thing. If she was orthodox, that'd be a really bad thing, just circling into the power hand. Watch Bisping versus Henderson 1 and you'll see why. But Nunes did something pretty crazy that I have not seen her do before. She all starts throwing this high level, super hard high kick, and she smashed Holly's head in with it. So
yeah.
And that basically, with her circling to the left, that just scoops him right back into you, and instead of scooping her back in for another right hand, it just landed flush and put her down.
So we'll go ahead and get to the fight where basically everybody now is a high-level wrestler who can coach Ben Askren. George Masvidal knocks Ben Askren out in the fastest knockout recorded in UFC history, basically with like a little double pump knee. Kind of runs in, fakes with the left. Ben Askren slides to avoid it, gets hit in the head with the knee, immediately crumples like a sack of potatoes. Everybody's talking about how Ben Askren, why would he shoot with his head down? Without really understanding what went on in this fight. Mr. Shackelford, take us through what went wrong for Ben Askren, and why did it look like it was just a crummy little double leg that he reached in and got, or a single leg that he just got plopped right on his head?
To me, it was pretty obvious. He thought that the left knee was what Masvidal was throwing. I mean, Masvidal stepped to his right and then leapt, and as he leapt forward with that left knee forward, that's why Askren dipped his head to his left, and then Masvidal it was a double knee. He tricked him. He was throwing a double knee, and he tricked him. And guess what? It worked. And when tricks like that work, you get spectacular results. Had it not worked, then you got Askren laying on top of him for the next 5 minutes. I stand by this pick. I would pick Askren 10 out of 10 times against Masvidal. Masvidal's shown trouble in the past going against guys that out-grapple him. It was the smart pick. It just didn't work out.
No,
and I like Masvidal. I can think of probably 5 fights off the top of my head right now that the dude's a great fighter in that don't include those Kimbo Slice videos.
Yes.
Which that's all that's popping out now. They just forget about all those other great fights he's had over the years. They're like, this dude was fighting for Kimbo Slice back in the day.
He was in dog fights.
Yeah. He's a great fighter. I think he's next for Usman. Forget Covington. We don't need to see him. Masvidal's up next for Usman.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, a lot of people are talking about how Askren just shot a bad shot. Guys, if you look at the video, Ben steps with his left leg. If you know anything about wrestling, if you're shooting with your left leg, your head is going to the right side, which would be the guy who's shooting's right side, the guy who's getting shot on's left side of his body. Askren's head, the reason why it dipped was because he was trying to avoid the first knee. Yeah. Like, you don't step with your left leg and expect your head to go on the left side like it was.
Yeah.
It was obviously not poor technique by Ben Askren. He was just trying to switch positions on that because he saw that knee coming forward. If you know anything about wrestling, you know that his head was not supposed to be there off of the jump street. And had that first knee not come, he would have just shot a regular double leg, head on the right side of the body. Like, this is Wrestling 101.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a genius to figure
And
that
the
out.
other thing, Wrestling 101, that a lot of people are saying is why he wasn't really in the classic checkmark style shot. He was kind of bent over. That's because the guy's hips were above his head. He didn't need to lower his level. You don't need to lower your level when the guy's jumping into you. You simply just have to dip your head.
You'll shoot completely underneath him.
Yes. So I feel like you showed me couple, video of a local guy that was pretty hysterical. I watched a couple that were not great. It just people are so stupid. Askren's, to me, still one of the greatest college wrestlers of all time. If he doesn't get tricked where he's like 20-0, getting ready to fight another predominantly wrestler for the title, and I don't think anybody's going to out-wrestle him. So, I was worried he might not. I think you even sent me that text, like he's probably done. And when we talked about it, we kind of discussed, like, he only came back to try to go for that title. He's going to be down in the mix now. Have you seen any of his post-fight interviews or that he's been doing?
I only saw one. He took it like a champ.
Oh, yeah, and it makes me think he'll come back. He's just straight up like, well, I lost. That sucks. Like,
yeah,
it happens.
That's worked 19 times before.
Yeah, and that's I don't even know why I question that he would just up and just be devastated by it. Askren's had big losses. He was super hyped going into the Olympics, and he lost his first match. He's had some, and you got to think that's more devastating than this. I mean, he worked quite literally his entire life to get to the Olympics,
right? And
his style matched up with the former champ, and he was, poised to meet that guy in the finals type thing, and he loses in his first round robin section. That had to have hurt worse than losing in a fist fight, basically. So I actually do think he'll come back and get a round of fights. I don't know that he'll be able to make it back to the title just because that division's so thick and full right now, and he won't ever fight Woodley. So I think he'll be back for fights. I unfortunately don't know that he'll make it to that title again.
Right. So we talked about it a little bit. John Blachowicz ends up beating Luke Rockhold in the second round. First round, Rockhold comes out there, looks good. Actually won every single judge's scorecard in the first round. Second round, I guess he kind of gets rattled at the end of the first, ends up coming in the second. You kind of know what's going to happen. You know that he's in a different place than what he was in the first. Blachowicz ends up finishing the fight. This was Rockhold's first fight at 205. Is he kind of done at this point?
I think so. I know Dana was calling for it at the press conference. He's like, look, he's a model. He's a legit model doing well for Ralph Lauren, except he called him Ralph Lauren, so it makes me feel like I've been saying it wrong for all my life. And he broke his jaw. He's had a lot of problems with that. You notice he had that sleeve on his left leg.
Yep.
This happens to Mark Hunt. Those guys that throw those big left kicks, sometimes they get checked. The inside leg kick gets checked hard, and it splits open their shin. Mark Hunt and Rockhold are the two I can think of that it happens the most to. But he's had staph in it a bunch of times. He's had to drop a couple fights because of it. He's even had skin grafts on it because it got so bad. Why fight anymore? I mean, at this point, he doesn't have a chin. This is the second broken jaw. You said he won that first round. He came out just like what I remember really good Rockhold being, throwing that huge high left kick and body kick and grappling. And as soon as he got away from that, Jan rocked him with a hook and then hit him with a kick after the bell, which was pretty fucked up. Yeah, Dean didn't say it. He just goes, it was initiated before the bell. I'm like, they showed the replay. It was like, and
then the kick comes.
And, so that was a little fucked up. But, I mean, second round, he just comes out with his hands down like
he was in a different place.
Well, before, so he was doing those kicks really well, mixed it into grappling. When he didn't get that takedown, all of a sudden his hands drop and he gets into boxing range. I don't know why he does that. Just a little hint for everybody: if you're getting in a fist fight, if you're close to the guy, you keep your hands up. If you don't, you get punched in the face. And guess what? If you don't move your head like Rockhold doesn't, you're gonna get hit every time. So, Jan gets probably like the key win of his career off a guy that I think skill-wise and stylistically should beat Jan 10 out of 10 times. He just doesn't seem to fight like it anymore. I've been kicking around the idea of writing some more articles or popping up some little memes or something for the guys to share. I think this week I'm going to try it out, and I'm going to do one on top 5 fights of Sanchez and Rockhold you need to watch. Because if you just watch them their last couple fights, you don't know how good these guys used to be.
Right. No, I actually agree with that. it's kind of a bummer, seeing Rockhold go out this way.
I hate it because he was in strike. Dude, he beat Tim Kennedy. He beat Jacare. He beat all the great 85-pounders, not named like Anderson Silva, of course. But I guess his best years were in Strikeforce.
Yeah. So next up we have Michael Chiesa. Basically looks like the big brother to Diego Sanchez. Diego kept getting in good positions, and then Chiesa was just so much bigger and stronger than him, and it was so apparent. Diego comes out before, he's like, "Oh, I'm walking around at 172. This weight cut was nothing for me." It turns out he was right, because the weight cut was nothing for him. He was way smaller than Chiesa. Anytime you thought the tides were going to turn, Chiesa just grabbed him, threw him off like a big brother does to little brother. Chiesa actually landed 125 strikes of the 130 that he had thrown.
Did you know Diego's leads the UFC in most head strikes absorbed?
That's crazy.
You know who number 2 is?
Who is it?
BJ Penn.
That makes sense.
Have you seen how BJ's life has gone the last couple years?
Not good. And Diego's even starting to talk a little crazy.
He was always crazy. So, you told me to watch that Ariel Helwani video. It was 17 minutes of him just... at some point he's like, I don't have CTE. I don't have head trauma. Look, man, I don't know the guy. All I know is the stuff that I've watched over him since 2005. He seems different. And anybody that can get asked 2 questions in a 20-minute interview and it just flies off the rails, you got to start to wonder.
Yeah.
The
UFC needs to do him a service.
And Dana White's usually really good. Chuck Liddell, a lot of those guys, he's done really, really good. He's like, hey, you've got to stop. I think he's sometimes too friendly with them. I think guys like BJ and Sanchez and even Chuck, he gave Chuck 4 too many fights. I think it's time to maybe not cut up the contract, but maybe give him a job.
Yes.
Find something for this dude to do.
I 100% agree with that.
If he cuts up the contract, they just go and fight for somebody else, which is what happened to Liddell. Liddell, they kept him on and just said, hey, you've always got a job. And they just basically paid him a certain amount of money a year to give him money and keep him from fighting. And as soon as this new company came in and cut all those contracts, you started seeing some of those guys really get into some trouble. Matt Hughes, Chuck took another fight and looked like he got murdered. It's bad. It doesn't end well for guys like that.
I 100% agree. So last one that we had actually picked, Arnold Allen ends up beating Gilbert Melendez in a 3-round decision. Allen just seemed to be in the right place, right time, just about a second faster than Gilbert Melendez the whole fight. Melendez was never clearly out of the fight, but he was about a half a second too late on everything. Do you think that Arnold Allen is one of these guys that we should be watching come up through the ranks who could be one of the next big things in UFC?
Yeah, for sure. I knew he was a guy to watch. Out of the 2 dogs that we picked for this fight card, I was most worried about that Melendez fight, but I don't want to say Melendez was old or just out of the game. He looked good. Arnold Allen just looked a little better. He's a kid to watch. I think he's like 14-1 now, or maybe 14-0. He's just the next generation of guy. He's got years on him. Look for him in the future. And that goes, when I put out my little card, where I put circles on guys and stuff, the 2 other guys, young guys that I picked out was the Chico Vera, tough dude who killed a guy, and then that Edmund Shabazian who actually absolutely ran through Jack Marshman, who's not a slouch. So we really had 3 dudes on this card that just potential of being future champs,
Yeah, no, I agree. Good night for the young guys, that's for sure. So we're going to go ahead and break down the card this weekend, headlined by Aspen Ladd and Jermaine Durandamy. And we'll start off with that fight. Aspen Ladd is a 165 favorite over Durandamy, who's plus 135. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
in light of this last week, mostly, just talking about the Gilbert fight, this is going to play heavy into some of these guys. We're not going to have a ton of breakdowns, and there's not a ton of fights on this card. But in this instance, me and you looked up Jermaine Durandamy's fight history. She fights about once a year and she started in 2008, and she fights about once a year. We haven't seen her since mid 2018. We're just gonna go lad. She's got youth, she's got experience, she's a better grappler, she can handle herself on her feet, which is where Jermaine Durandamy really shines. Just pick Aspen Ladd if that's the pick to go. She's undefeated, young kid, tough all around. Durandamy's been out for a year. She's probably like 42 years old. You got to go, Ladd.
Yeah, I actually agree with that one 100%. So next up, we have Uriah Faber coming out of retirement, getting thrown against one of the young dogs in the division. He's actually ranked 15, but he is 15-1. It is Ricky Simon who is the favorite at minus 340. So he is a substantial favorite to Uriah Faber, who is plus 260. Mr. Shackelford, is there any way that Uriah Faber can come out of retirement and win this fight?
Look, same thing. History of last week has shown us that the guys coming out of retirement, they can still be really good and really in shape and really healthy and still not win against these young kids. So you got to go Ricky Simon. The only real fear here is maybe he gets a little starstruck. You got to think this is in Sacramento. This is in Sacktown. This is Uriah Faber's town.
Yep.
It will be insane. Uriah Faber, I don't think he'll get stopped. It'll be 15 minutes. If you saw the Mike Brown fight back in WEC where Uriah Faber breaks both his hands in the first round and then fights Mike Brown with 2 broken hands for 5 rounds, he's not a pussy. He's not going to lay down for anyone. So I expect it to be just like the Melendez fight. It's going to be fun. Faber's going to be in it. He's going to have his chances. But this kid, unless he just gets shell-shocked from the intensity of the crowd and fighting really the only guy on the Mount Rushmore of little tiny baby guys, he's going to get a unanimous decision out of this.
Yeah, I actually like that pick. I think an interesting pick would actually be to pick Ricky Simon in a unanimous decision, or pick him via decision.
Yeah.
So next up, we have even odds, actually. Both guys minus 115, so there is no favorite here. Ryan Hall versus Darren Elkins, the damage. Mr. Shackelford, what's the pick?
This is the fight that I'm looking forward to most.
By far.
And it's probably going to be a weird fight. I guarantee it'll be weird.
It's a Darren Elkins fight. It's going to be weird.
Well, and Ryan Hall always has weird fights. So it's going to be weird. Probably won't be particularly amazing until the ending. And it's the 4th fight from the bottom. It's probably like the early Fight Pass only prelim headliner, but I'm gonna go Ryan Hall. He's got such a weird style. I think it's gonna look a lot like that Gray Maynard fight where he just stands on the outside and every time Gray gets close, he kicks him in the face and then backs up 20 steps. And I think Elkins isn't gonna go the Maynard route. I think we know Elkins enough to know he's gonna dive into danger and just see what happens. So
that's every fight.
I'm going to go with Ryan Hall via submission or decision. We'll go submission. I think if it was another guy like Maynard, it would be decision.
He'll have to put him out or break a limb.
Yes, and I don't think Ryan Hall will have a problem with that. He's kind of a weird dude. He's kind of a stone cold-faced killer. Like, he just seems like he has a conscience, but he's one of those guys. I mean, look, he ripped BJ Penn's knee off, and if you can rip one of your heroes' leg off to get a tap and just not break a sweat about it, then a guy like Darren Elkins ain't gonna raise your heartbeat.
No, I agree.
I wish that was the headliner. Like, I want to phone Dana White and be like, just put this as the headliner. I know it's gonna be weird. I know most people don't know either one of these guys. Well, surely everybody knows the damage, but I wish that was the headliner.
If you at least know the tattoo.
Oh yeah, the tattoo is world renowned.
No, it's an all-time tattoo. First team all tattoo.
For sure.
So last fight that we're really going to break down here is Josh Emmett versus Masad Bektik. Bektik is a minus 165 favorite over Josh Emmett, who is the dog, plus 135. Mr. Shackelford, are you going to go with a clean sweep for the favorites?
This fight, this is basically the identical guys fighting each other. I mean, they're both big punchers and solid wrestlers. It's a weird one. I'm not real sure who to pick on this one. I think I'll go ahead and take the dog on this one. I just have a gut feeling Emmett will pull this one out. I'm not sure why. I mean, if you watch these guys fight, if they looked a little more alike, you would think they were the same guy. Huge puncher, solid wrestling. That's the staple of both their games. So it's either going to be whichever guy can get the takedown or whichever guy is going to land that bomb.
Yeah, that should be another fun fight, I think. Overall, I really like this card. Should make for some fun fights. Obviously, you have Andre Touchy-Feely on this card. You have Marvin Vettori, who I actually like to watch fight. Should be a good night of fights. Mr. Shackelford, any news and notes before we wrap this show up?
One more fight that should be interesting on there is the Juliana Pena versus Nico Montano. You remember Montano's was the 25-pound champ. You remember her?
Yes, actually I do.
She won it on the show, missed weight for a fight. They rebooked it, missed weight again.
And then they basically just kicked her off the...
Well, then she popped for like Osterine or whatever. I'm just interested. And Juliana Pena was an Ultimate Fighter season winner that beat Kat. Then had a loss against Valentina, I believe, and I think she had a baby. So I really like Juliana Pena. I was really big on her. It'll be interesting to see how these girls bounce back. As far as news and notes, I am going to try and check it out tonight for the first time live. Have you heard of the PFL, Professional Fighters League?
Yes, I have. Is that Randy Couture's thing?
He's a commentator on it. So is Eve Edwards, and I forget the other commentator. But it was World Series of Fighting. Now it's Professional Fighters League. So the way they do it, it's they do these playoffs where they have like 8 or 10 guys or something that fight each other, and it's like a round robin, and they get points. And if you get 2 fights to get points, like a knockout's more points, whatever, and those points get you into the like tournament. And then the tournament, you fight 2 fights in one night, 1 2-round fight, and then 1 3-round fight in the finals or whatever. But the big thing for me is the winner of that gets $1 million.
Oh, wow.
And last year they had 6 weight classes, so they gave out $6 million. It was floundering, I thought, last year. You couldn't ever find it. It was on like NBC, but ESPN actually picked them up. So tonight, live, I think the first half of the card is on ESPN Plus, and the second half of the card is on ESPN2. So ESPN's diving into MMA pretty big. The names you need to look out for is the Action Man Chris Curtis and Magomed Karimov. That dude's supposed to be amazing. Kayla Harrison, 2-time Olympic judo gold medalist, is a complete badass. She's fighting Sarah Kaufman stuff. Another dude to look out for, Ray Cooper III. He's knocked out Jake Shields twice. The dude's supposed to be a killer. I have not seen any of these guys fight live except for Chris Curtis, and Sarah Kaufman, of course. So something to check out if you're bored. There's also a ONE FC card this weekend with some of their bigger names. Giorgio Pastorian. He's a kickboxer. Pasarian, I believe, is his last name. And then Angela Lee, who is their really big female, like atomweight fighters fighting. So an insane amount of fights this weekend. Makes me happy as shit.
Yeah. And on that note, Dippers, for Drake, for Mr. Shackelford, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.